Rain, wind, tornado warnings, and storm surge. It's been a busy 24 to 36 hours across the Texas Gulf Coast and parts of South Texas. Alberto's making landfall this morning in Mexico. What about our next system? Let's talk about it in this Thursday edition of the Texas Weather Roundup. Good morning. I'm Texas Storm Chasers Baldy and Chief David Reimer. It is Thursday, the 20th of June, 2024. It is a wet and stormy morning across most of the Texas Gulf Coast into parts of South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, with rain now falling in the Edwards Plateau and Concho Valley, all thanks to rain bands and moisture from now Tropical Storm Alberto, which is making landfall this morning in northern Mexico. Let's just take a look at the radar satellite. Here is what things look like this morning. You can see the actual center of circulation with Alberto is going to be making landfall several hundred miles south of the Texas-Mexico border, south of Tampico, Mexico. Maximum sustained winds are near 50 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure of 995 millibars. Alberto's a very broad tropical cyclone with impacts extending out far away from the center of circulation. As all of y'all on the Texas Gulf Coast are well aware, based on the fact you have had pretty substantial coastal flooding during the high tide cycles over the last 36 hours. That will likely continue to be an issue for today, even into parts of Friday. We're going to see flooding near high tide as onshore winds continue to bring water to the Gulf Coast, though the worst of the flooding probably will be from yesterday's high tide into this morning's high tide, this afternoon into tonight into tomorrow. We should start to calm things down a bit in terms of the high tide cycle. Otherwise, you can see we do have rain this morning across the pretty much coastal bend, Rio Grande Valley, with the main axis of rain now extending back into the Edwards Plateau, Concho Valley, and Big Country. We expect that will continue progressing off to the west this afternoon into the Big Bend, parts of the Permian Basin, the Trans-Pecos, and eventually the borderland. In terms of widespread heavy rainfall, that's going to be about it. Certainly not the event we were projecting several days ago, and a lot of y'all are not happy about that, which is fair. But we did mention that there was going to be a pretty sharp northern gradient in terms of forecast rain totals, or at least there could be, and that ended up playing true, unfortunately. But we're still going to have an abundance of tropical moisture in place as we go through this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. That will result in scattered to, at times, numerous pop-up thunderstorms during the afternoon hours, or at least the daytime heating hours, really across the southern half of Texas. Though today into tonight, we're going to see clouds across nearly all of the state, which will help keep temperatures a bit cooler. And then tomorrow we'll see pop-up thunderstorms, at least across the southern half of the state. Not necessarily widespread heavy rain, but definitely the potential for some of those storms to produce locally heavy rainfall, gusty winds, and lightning. Forecast rain totals over the next 5 days. This is going to run from 7 a.m. this morning through 7 a.m. Tuesday, the 25th. You can see at this point forecasting an additional maybe 1/2 inch to 2 inches of rain at times along the Texas Gulf Coast, South Texas, Coastal Bend, Coastal Plains, Rio Grande Valley, Rio Grande Plains, up into the Edwards Plateau, into the eastern Big Bend. But again, once we get past this morning, this afternoon, much of this will be in the form of pop-up thunderstorms, which means your neighbors may get 2 inches of rain, you may get not a thing. That's just how it goes. But yeah, we could see some localized rainfall accumulations even farther north, but at this point, we're not expecting another big widespread bout of heavy precipitation over the next 5 days, which is important to know because while we're beginning to say goodbye to Alberto, our next tropical blob is already on the radar. Blob number 2 is currently over technically, it's going to be moving over the Yucatan Peninsula over the next couple of days, and then once it makes it into the Bay of Campeche, southwestern Gulf of Mexico, just like, well, the origins of Alberto with Blob 1, it's going to likely spin up into a tropical cyclone as well. That could become another tropical storm by Saturday and Sunday, which would then likely be pushed west by a heat dome establishing itself over us into Mexico. The differences between Blob 1 and Blob 2 are Blob 2 is probably going to have a much more concise area of precipitation and circulation, which means we're probably not going to see the impacts of Blob 1 repeat themselves with our second blob this weekend, at least in most of the state of Texas. We could see some additional rainfall across the Rio Grande Valley, deep south Texas on the outer bands of Blob 2, but at this point we're not expecting the wind field to be, 600 miles north of the center of circulation, resulting in strong to, gusty winds on the entire Texas Gulf Coast and another round of significant higher-end coastal flooding. Yeah, we're probably going to still have rough surf, dangerous rip currents, probably some minor coastal tidal flooding through the weekend, early next week along the Texas Gulf Coast. But at this point, our Blob 2 this weekend looks like it is going to be a Mexico issue versus, the entire Texas Gulf Coast, South Texas. So we'll keep an eye on it just in case the path shifts north. And if it does, we could have some issues for the Gulf Coast, Texas Gulf Coast. But at this point, this would be much more of a non-event for us. But we're going to definitely keep an eye on it just in case. Otherwise, as you can see, most of the state, outside of maybe some isolated activity in the Panhandle and West Texas at times, it's going to be a mostly hot and dry weekend and early next week. High temperatures over the next 5 days. Well, here we go. Well, that's not even today's high temperature forecast. How about we try that again? There you go. It's going to be cooler across the western half of the state today with precipitation, cloud cover highs in the 70s. How about that? 71 up at the top of the Guadalupe Mountains, mid-70s. Marfa, Alpine. Boy, that's not bad at all. 90 degrees this afternoon in El Paso. That'll be about 15 degrees cooler than yesterday. Across the eastern half of the state, even with pop-up activity, we're still going to make it into the upper 80s and 90s with heat index values near 100 under a very humid air mass. But if you end up with a pop-up storm, hey, you'll at least probably cool off back into the 80s. Tomorrow, as precipitation fades away, we still may have some pop-ups, but even with, we're going to be back mostly into the upper 80s and 90s across the state, especially across the eastern half of the state. Heat index values probably running about 10 degrees above the air temperature. Sunday, getting closer to triple digits again, on across, well, the eastern northeastern half of the state. There you go. Vocabulary is difficult. Highs mostly back in the 90s. Heat index values probably above 100. And then as we get into Sunday, it's actually probably going to be in the triple digits from, the Panhandle, Northwest Texas, DFW, triple digits probably, Texarkana, triple digits. And we could have heat index values near 105 to 110 degrees. Further south, it's going to be in the 80s and 90s, southwestern half of the state, 102 on Sunday in El Paso. And then as we get into Monday, bump it up another degree or two. It's going to be hot next week. Heat dome's going to establish itself across most of the state, especially the northern half of Texas. So get ready for several days of triple-digit high temperatures. As we head to next week across the state, we may have some cooler weather, again, deep south Texas, the Rio Grande Valley on Monday, as we continue to deal with some of the outer bands of Tropical Blob number 2 with some precipitation, gusty winds, and maybe some minor coastal flooding. It doesn't look like we're doing the whole what we did over the last 36 hours again, fortunately. So as we continue to deal with the active tropics, hope you'll stay tuned to us. The good news is, well, I guess we needed the rain, so that's not really great news for most of us, but On the bright side, it's not 110 degrees either yet. That's going to be it for your Texas Weather Roundup this Thursday. As always, you can get your local weather forecast, interactive weather radars, and more in the free Texas Storm Chasers mobile app. Just search for Texas Storm Chasers where you download apps for your device. As always, thank you to those watching us on the Texas Weather Center YouTube channel. We appreciate the feedback, good and bad. And of course, give us a thumbs up, give us a thumbs down, whatever floats your boat. We appreciate it. Y'all have a great Thursday. We'll chat with y'all again by Friday morning. Have a good one. God bless.